So, before we jump in, just a quick mandatory heads up for you. This audio is AI generated via Google Notebook LM.
Right. It is produced for and supported by the iNtaka Center.
Exactly. It basically demonstrates the tool's research capabilities. And, just so you're aware, the Google tool is free, but it does use your uploaded content under license, and, well, it may contain errors.
Yeah. Always good to keep that in mind before we start.
For sure. So for today's deep dive, we are looking at this really fascinating proposed legal model.
Conceptual legal model.
Right, conceptual, exploring this massive question. Like, in South Africa, could the law actually force algorithms to stop spreading climate lies?
Which is such a huge question to unpack. We are diving into a paper by Thomas Alfred, and he actually just won Best Postgraduate Speaker for this research at the African Cyber Law Conference.
Oh, wow, that is seriously impressive.
It really is, and the paper has been supported by the iNtaka Center. They will be distributing it once it has the opportunity to go through peer review.
But we should probably clarify right up front, I mean, this isn't about practical, real-world limitations happening today.
No, not at all. It is purely a proposed legal theory. It explores whether limiting climate disinformation on social media could be legally justifiable within the South African context.
Which bridges, what, constitutional law, social media governance, and environmental issues all at once?
All three, yes. Because to even wrap our heads around this theory, we first have to look at the actual hazard polluting our digital spaces.
The disinformation hazard.
Exactly. So the paper points out how fossil fuel companies are literally paying to astroturf their political positions into the public sphere.
Wait, for anyone listening who maybe hasn't heard that term, astroturfing is basically when a giant corporate campaign wears a mask to look like, a grassroots citizen movement, right?
That is exactly it. They pay to manufacture these fake narratives, but the real legal hazard is what happens next.
Because of the social media platforms.
Yes, because platforms profit from advertising and engagement. So once that corporate narrative is established, the platform's algorithms have this massive financial incentive to just keep distributing that environmental disinformation.
Because, outrage keeps you scrolling.
Right. It is very profitable.
I really like the analogy of imagine someone intentionally pumping a highly invasive toxic algae into a river.
That is a great way to visualize it.
Yeah, so the algorithm isn't the algae itself, but it acts like this rapid artificial current. It spreads the algae everywhere, and that ends up choking out the oxygen or, the truth that the whole ecosystem needs to survive.
That perfectly captures the dynamic.
Yeah.
And the legal question Alfred raises is, well, how does the system deal with that artificial current?
Right, because South African law doesn't just let you dump toxic algae into the water supply and say, hey, that is my constitutional right.
Precisely. But this is where people get nervous. Because who decides what disinformation even is?
Yeah, isn't that just opening a massive door to censorship? Like, how is this not a free speech violation?
That is the exact tension this paper tackles. It argues that this deliberate, weaponized conduct by the fossil fuel lobby actually meets the strict legal definition of disinformation.
Okay, but what about protecting free expression?
Well, in South African law, free expression is not absolute. If your speech infringes on other constitutional rights, the law applies what are called limitation consequences.
So the court essentially does a balancing test.
Exactly. Because the South African Bill of Rights is fundamentally interconnected.
Meaning you cannot just isolate one right from the others.
Right. You cannot neatly slice out the right to free expression from, say, the right to a healthy environment or the right to life and dignity.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the law recognizes that if the environment collapses because we could not agree on basic facts, well, none of those other rights can flourish anyway.
Which completely makes sense. And I guess that explains why Alfred bridges constitutional law, social media governance, and environmental issues. But why is that specific cross-field work so essential here?
Because you just cannot regulate a massive interconnected digital network using siloed legal theories.
Like trying to use standard South African constitutional jurisprudence on its own.
Exactly. If you only look at past constitutional rulings, you miss how the algorithms actually function today. Your legal frameworks have to mirror the complex, interconnected realities of both digital platforms and biological ecosystems to be effective.
So if you are listening to this and scrolling through your feed right now, you are living right in the middle of this.
We all are.
This conceptual model really challenges us to weigh the limitation of weaponized free expression against the literal survival of our broader rights.
It asks us to recognize that democratic participation requires a shared baseline of reality. When that reality is constantly disrupted by profitable digital pollution, the system breaks.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on.
It is a big one.
If our digital currents continue to prioritize spreading profitable, toxic algae over the oxygen of actual facts, at what point does the entire ecosystem of democratic consensus just collapse entirely?